Is there any place for Jeremy Corbyn in the Labour Party? I could kind of almost cry at this story. There are so many facets to this. Something still smells pretty bad over there at Labour HQ. And remember, the Labour Party isn't one entity. It is split up. But you've got the leader of the Labour Party, but of course he's not got full control. He can't even control who his deputy is. So you have the varying committees around the Labour Party, the National Executive, and all manner of other characters involved in this. Just 3 weeks ago, after the release of that anti-Semitism inquiry into racism in the highest ranks of the party, the former leader, Jeremy Corbyn, was suspended. His paw prints were all over it. Nothing covert going on here. This was all in broad daylight. A left-wing smash and grab on the rights and the status of British Jews. This group was a punchbag for anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic socialists who felt they had armour-plated protection in advancing their racism. That protection, by the way, came from the leadership itself. The report was absolutely damning. And by the way, just to clarify again, this was a report by the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, not some fly-by-night committee. It pulled no punches. It was unequivocal of its condemnation of those at the top. So Corbyn was gone. End of a bad era? Well, not quite. Yesterday, the very body that suspended him reinstated him. In just 14 working days, the man at the helm of the most toxic era of Labour is back on the benches. Nothing to see here. Remember, that suspension came after Corbyn claimed that the scale of anti-Semitism in the party had been overstated in the report. So this was a man, the leadership were identified in this report as being wholly responsible for a lack of action or mobilising responses to incredibly distressing reports of anti-Semitism. Just think of this in any other form of racism, and maybe that for some strange reason it requires me to add that caveat. Maybe that clarifies things a little more for you. And the leadership did pretty much nothing. He claimed that the claims were overstated. To this day, this tells you everything you need to know about the fabric of the man, the extremities of the man. No apology, not a single apology from Jeremy Corbyn. There has been nothing. He's been asked multiple times, would you say sorry? We regret the No, say sorry, Mr Corbyn. Well, this could have been, no, say sorry. Well, we think, say sorry. That's what it requires. A heartfelt apology. You were the man at the helm. You were the leader of the party. Say sorry. How hard can it be? And this is the problem with racism in socialism. They don't think it's racism. They think it's okay. Their defense seems to be that this is about punching up. And in that sentence itself tells you everything you need to know. The Jews are doing just fine. That seems to be the root of the problem. They can't, for example, they can't separate their views on Israel from their views of Jews. They see it all as one kind of shady cartel. They're all in it together. If it's Israeli or Jewish, approach with caution. They advance every stereotype you can imagine, from hook-nosed bankers to the idea that every business on the planet is run by a Zionist cartel. That's pretty much, in a nutshell, what this is all about. Now, interestingly, in the last hour, Sir Keir Starmer has said that Jeremy Corbyn will not sit as a Labour MP, He's still an MP. He will just have the word Labour removed. He will sit on those green benches for the remainder of this Parliament. If he stands latterly in Islington as an independent, then he can find himself re-elected if his constituents so wish. Is there any place for Corbyn in the Labour Party? And I really want to speak to you, if you are Jewish, and a Labour supporter, or even just a Labour supporter. I appreciate they're thin on the ground these days, particularly around here, but you take my point. If that is your party, what are you making of this? It's interesting, I threw this onto social media, this question, and it took about 0.1 second for people to come out and kind of give the same Corbyn response. And I've cited this before because it comes up so often. I mentioned it a second ago when somebody called me while we were doing a debate on this, and a guy said, why are you defending the Jews? They're doing just fine. They are doing just fine. All of them. All of them are doing just fine. The guy didn't even realise that in using that phrase, he was part of the problem. I mean, the crass and the mass and industrial scale stereotyping in that respect, it would just be funny if it wasn't so darn serious, damaging, hurtful and offensive. Think about what we're dealing with here. 0344 499 1000. If you're an outsider in all of this, I think this absolutely brilliant. It's sad that it took this to expose Jeremy Corbyn. Think back to the Labour leadership back in, 2015 or something, 2014-15? When suddenly this outrider called Corbyn. When I was a kid, I remember Corbyn being on the telly. When I was a kid, I remember Corbyn being on the telly. He was always shouting and ranting. He was in that kind of classic sort of ultra angry, left-wing, head-shaking, corduroy jacket-wearing, scruffy beard-carrying, kind of spectacle sort of lefty. And he was just a bit amusing. I think my dad used to go, here he comes. It was Corbyn's on. It was that kind. And then, of course, as I got into this thing, he would pitch up every now and again on Question Time or the like. But, I mean, he was so far to the left of his own party that... even then, that it seemed preposterous that this man would ever be voted in. But of course, the Labour Party were in their own turmoil. They couldn't quite work out Blairism, even though the bloke had won them 3 elections. That apparently, winning in Labour is a sort of bourgeois concept that they can't really deal with too well. Opposition is much better. Just snipe from the sidelines constantly. That suits us just fine. And so, against if you'd have put a bet on a year before he became leader, that Jeremy Corbyn would be the leader of the Labour Party, then it would have been so preposterous. I'm not even sure a bookmaker would have opened a book on that one. I'm not absolutely sure. It's kind of a little like sort of suggesting that Sooty could run a multinational company. I mean, it just doesn't... What? The leader of the... No, come on, don't be stupid. Doesn't work. But elected he was. And it took this to really flush out the extremities of the man. Because prior to that, he was kind of just written off as a joke. And then it got serious. And then you begin to realise the problems with socialism. And the reason why socialism is such a vile, disruptive, antagonistic, nasty concept, notion, political ideology. It stinks to high heavens, everything about it. I mean, on paper, a socialist system, education, health, might well work. That's a very different concept from purebred, high-octane socialism. There should be no place for that in a civilized world. It is destructive, it's manipulative. In order to succeed, it has to get dirty and nasty. It's the only way it can construct its house of cards. There is no other way. 0344 499 1000. And so it was revealed. And Corbyn himself, the man who'd sat there on the back benches, claiming to be, a friend of this group and a friend of that group. Well, we know only too well who he was a friend of. See wreath-laying videos for detail. So if you're a member of the Labour Party, if that has been your party in the past, what are you feeling about this today? From a Jewish perspective, as a Jew, what do you make of this? Because the bloke that won't say sorry was reappointed back by the group that suspended him not 3 weeks ago. Sir Keir Starmer has moved, but Sir Keir Starmer, of course, was the man who actively campaigned to make Jeremy Corbyn the Prime Minister. And he knew this at the time.